All right, so cybersecurity. It's the topic that, let's be honest, is keeping most independent school leaders up at night, right?
Definitely keeping us busy.
Yeah. And you've sent us a ton of stuff on this. We've got reports, articles, even notes on that cybersecurity pilot program. Clearly, this is hitting everyone's radar.
Yeah, and with good reason, right? I mean, look at the ransomware numbers alone, 64% increase last year. That's huge.
Huge and scary. So let's dig into why independent schools seem to be, I don't know, maybe the bullseye on the target these days. What's going on?
Well, it's almost like this perfect storm, right? You've got this evolution of threats happening at the same time that schools have these, well, vulnerabilities.
Okay, a perfect storm. That sounds ominous. Let's break it down. What do you mean by evolving threats? Like, how have things changed?
It's not just your typical virus anymore, or some kid in their basement trying to hack the system. We're talking sophisticated stuff. DDoS attacks that can knock entire online learning systems offline for days.
Days. Wow.
Yeah, or phishing scams so real-looking, even tech-savvy staff could fall for them.
So not just a Nigerian prince asking for your bank info anymore.
Right. Think, an email that looks exactly like it's from the headmaster asking for an urgent payment for, I don't know, a school trip or something.
Oh, I can see it now. And of course, you're going to respond to the headmaster, right?
Yeah.
You think it's legit.
Exactly. And here's the thing. Unlike, say, a big corporation that has a whole cybersecurity team, tons of resources, most independent schools, they're working with a lot less.
Way tighter budgets, yeah.
Right. And cybersecurity, as important as it is, it might not be top of the list when you're choosing where to spend those limited funds.
Makes sense, but also terrifying given what we're talking about. It's like trying to secure Fort Knox with a screen door, right? Like, it's just not going to cut it.
And the thing is, at the same time as these threats are getting more complex, schools are relying on technology even more than ever. Think online learning platforms, all the student data.
Right, it's not just grades in a computer anymore, it's everything.
Exactly. So it's not even just about data being stolen, but what happens if a whole system gets locked down? Learning grinds to a halt.
Okay, I'm officially starting to sweat a bit now. But there are laws to protect student data, right? We hear those acronyms all the time. FERPA, GDPR, CCPA, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But surely those matter.
Oh, they absolutely matter. And it's not just about avoiding fines, although those can be pretty hefty. It's about protecting student privacy, building trust with families. That's huge.
So it's a legal and an ethical obligation. Can you give me an example of what this looks like in action, though? Like a real school, a real situation.
Sure. One of the things we read about was this case in Alabama. They decided to actually put money aside specifically for cybersecurity in schools.
Okay, that's smart. Be proactive.
Exactly. And they saw a big drop in those phishing attacks just by doing mandatory cybersecurity training for their entire staff. Proof that even on a tight budget, you can make a difference.
That's reassuring, at least. So it sounds like we've got this perfect storm brewing, evolving threats, not a lot of resources to throw at it, and this really important legal and ethical duty to protect student data. That feels like a lot.
It's a challenge, no doubt, but it's not hopeless. The good news is there are actually practical strategies that every school, no matter their budget, can put in place.
Okay, I need to hear this because right now it feels a bit overwhelming, to be honest. How do we even begin to build that cybersecurity fortress when resources are so tight?
Well, it's less about building an actual fortress and more like, shifting our mindset.
Right.
We need to think about security in layers.
Okay, layers. I like that. Give me the rundown.
So you've got your basics, right? Your firewalls, antivirus software. Those are important, but they're really just the first line of defense.
Like the locks on your doors, but not the whole security system.
Exactly. So then you layer on things like, strong password policies, making sure everyone's using multi-factor authentication.
Okay, so it's getting tougher to break in. What else can we add to this security cake?
This is the big one, and honestly, where a lot of schools miss the mark, it's the human element. Every single person in that school community, from teachers to staff to, even the students, they need to be cyber aware.
No more blaming IT when something goes wrong, huh?
Right. It's everyone's responsibility. And there are some really interesting ways to do this. Like, one article mentioned simulated phishing attacks.
Like a test.
Yeah, basically. They send out these fake phishing emails and see who clicks on what. Then they can target training based on, where people are messing up.
So kind of like a fire drill, but for cybersecurity. You practice what to do before the alarm goes off?
Exactly. And that's not all. A few of the things we read highlighted how important it is to have really clear, easy to understand policies about online behavior. for everyone, staff and students.
So not just a bunch of tech jargon nobody understands.
Exactly, because when people understand the why behind the rules, they're way more likely to actually follow them.
Makes sense. It's about building that culture of cybersecurity, not just like a checklist of things to do.
100%. And that's where collaboration comes in. Imagine if schools could share what's working, what threats they're seeing, maybe even resources for training.
Strength in numbers, right, instead of everyone trying to figure it out on their own.
Right. There was even a case study where a group of schools all chipped in to hire a cybersecurity consultant together. They got help with their security plans, vulnerability assessments, all that for way cheaper than if they'd each done it alone.
Now that's what I'm talking about. Teamwork makes the dream work. But let's be real, even with all the precautions in the world, sometimes those bad guys still get through. So what happens then? What's the plan?
That's where the incident response plan comes in. And trust me, this isn't optional.
Okay, so not just preventing attacks, but knowing what to do if, or I guess when, they happen. What does a good plan even look like for a school?
Well, it's going to be tailored to the school, right? Their size, their tech, all that. But generally, you're looking at things like who's in charge if something happens? How are we communicating? Do we have backups of everything? And, super important, how do we tell parents without freaking everyone out?
Damage control. Got it. Get things back up and running as smoothly as possible. Seems like a good plan could really make or break you in that situation.
It really can. One school we read about, they had this ransomware attack, but because they had a plan, they practiced it, they knew what to do, isolated the problem, restored their data, got the authorities involved, kept parents in the loop.
They were prepared. Bet that was a relief.
Huge relief, I'm sure. And the best part, even if you never actually have to use that plan, just having it gives you peace of mind.
Like an insurance policy you hope you never have to use.
Exactly. Okay, so we've covered a lot. The threats, the challenges, the importance of layers, training, collaborating, having a plan. But technology changes so fast. How do we make sure all this hard work doesn't go out of date next week?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. What's the next level up? Cybersecurity 2.0.
You got it. And it all comes down to one key idea.
Cybersecurity 2.0. Hit me with it. What's this key idea?
It's kind of a mindset shift. Instead of adding on security measures after the fact, we bake it into everything we do from the start. Cybersecurity by design, that's what they're calling it.
I like the sound of that. So less about reacting and more about being proactive. How does that play out in a real school setting?
So think about it. You're choosing a new student management system. You're not just looking at features, you're digging into their security protocols. Data encryption, privacy controls, that's a must-have. Same with online learning platforms. How secure are they? What kind of authentication do they use?
So it's like security is a top priority, not an afterthought, built into the DNA of every tech decision.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just the tech, too. Imagine cybersecurity woven into the curriculum itself.
No, that's interesting, but how would that even work? It's not like every student needs to become a hacker, right?
Not at all. But they do need to be informed. Think about it. Social studies, they can learn about online safety, digital citizenship, philosophy class, they're already debating ethics. Why not AI and data privacy? Even computer science, they can learn to code. Why not code with security in mind from the start?
Okay, I'm seeing it now. It's not just teaching them about cybersecurity. It's giving them the tools to actually build a safer digital world. That's a powerful idea.
It is, and it's about preparing them for whatever comes next. But let's be real, all of this takes money, right? And independent schools, we don't always have a ton of wiggle room in the budget.
Yeah, that's the reality. So how do we make it happen?
Well, the good news is more and more people are realizing how crucial this is. That FCC pilot program we mentioned, putting $200 million towards school cybersecurity, that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's huge. Hopefully a sign of things to come.
Exactly. But even without a huge influx of cash, we can start changing the culture. Awareness, training, resources, those things don't have to break the bank.
It's about making it a priority, even with limited resources.
Exactly. And that brings us to what I think is the most important takeaway from all of this. We've looked at the research, we've talked about the challenges, but most importantly, we've seen that there are solutions out there. Things every school can do right now to create a safer learning environment.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, but only if we act on it.
Exactly. So the question is, what will you do with this information? What steps will you take to protect your school, your students, your community? It's about all of us working together. That's how we make a difference.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's been a fascinating deep dive into the world of cybersecurity and independent schools. A little alarming at times, but ultimately, I'm feeling hopeful.
Me too. Remember, it all starts with awareness. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.
And on that note, we'll sign off. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into cybersecurity and independent schools.